Hello again, welcome to Reloved Guitars. This is Sam here, and today we've got Jabez's Dimension bass. So this is a Fender beastie. Look at it, an ash-bodied, maple-necked bass, active bass, 18-volt active pickups, and it's quite an unusual beastie. And you've got these humbucker pickups here and a 5-way switch. You've got a volume and 3 EQ things. So these have all got center détentes, and this is a roll straight through. And in this position you get neck only. That position you get bridge only. That position you get it's the outer or inner coils, outer coils I think, of both. That position you get all of them on. That position you get the inner coils only, and then that position you get the neck only. What it means is that in any position you get humbucking pickup. Big chunky Fender high mass bridge there, can't go wrong with that. Although I've read some people talking about how there's a limit beyond which you can't go in terms of action. Yeah, it's lower than the spec that Fender gives for sort of standard precision jazz bass specs as it is, so you get about another millimetre down here on this one, so a little bit grubby, could do with it clean. As you can see, it actually shows it up more on this camera view than anywhere else, but in good nick, and Jabez likes it, enjoys playing it. It's a favourite bass. It's a funny one because there's a lot of interesting online stuff about these. Interesting as in a lot of people, just need an extra hand a second, a lot of people don't rate them terribly highly, and that's interesting because when you read all the, or start to read all the stuff about why they don't rate it, it quickly doesn't come down to too much of any substance. It's a lot to do with the kind of hybridness where you know, people are saying, well, it's Fender's attempt to be a MusicMan or something like that, you know, going outside of its usual Fendery thing. So it's a mismatch. It's got the Fender headstock, a wider neck, I think, wider neck here than a precision bass or jazz bass. And then a slightly different body here and a completely unusual pick guard and so on, and of course different pickups, and then the active pickups as well. So there's a kind of feeling that it, you know, the Fender seems to be damned if it tries to do something different, and damned if it doesn't, like all companies. With the result that this thing apparently was withdrawn, discontinued, and you know, so it's a kind of rarity in a way, a collector's piece. Now, not being a bass player, it's an interesting one for me because basses are challenging for me to set up, in that I'm not really quite sure how somebody plays them, so I have to kind of get as much info as I can up front and then sort of try and make a good call on this. Now Jabez has talked to me, I don't know what you can see, yeah, talked to me a bit about the way this plays for him at the moment, and he said his experience of it was beautiful out of the box, and after a while he took it to someone and they lowered the action a little bit, and his description was it became a bit percussive, a bit too percussive, and that's in inverted commas, and I think he was particularly picking it up here. Now there's a bit of fret slap there. Tuning's good. The knobs were the kind of the screws on the knobs, just a kind of personal thing that they're kind of misaligned. 3 of them are in line and one of them sits around the corner. Just the screw thing, so we'll just tweak that. But so, and I think the jack needs some tightening. Possibly we'll have a look at that. And then I think it needs a clean. But one of the things we were talking about was, I don't think we want to necessarily raise the action. I took a look at the Fender specs because I'm not a bass player. I'm much more, used to intuitively feeling for the low action on a 6 string. But and I would, in a sense, I would often be tempted to go low as possible, obviously without running into a lot of slap that you couldn't comfortably play. But and people's playing style is very different. But the Fender specs said a couple of things. So they were talking about a 16th fret action. So that's where it joins the body. Or sorry, their thing was where the neck joins the body, which is about the 16th fret. They were reading off an action of 4mm practically on the low E, which is pretty high, and that's the gap between the 16th fret-ish and the underside of the string. Now that's quite something. 3, 4. That would be a good 2mm. Well, I would read it right now as exactly 2.5. So it's 1.5mm. Fender spec is 1.5mm taller than this is currently set. And again, it's one of those things that you can have it there, you can go higher, you can go lower, it's entirely up to you. So I'm just kind of feeling my way around, getting a sense of what the spec says, which is higher than most people want. But then again, the spec says higher than most people want when it comes to 6 strings. So I kind of err on the slightly lower side. Jabez was saying that I think he quite liked the feel of the action, the way that the person who had tweaked it had set it, but it was what he called the percussiveness that was bothering him. Now, I don't think some other players have reported that the active pickups, if you're too close, the strings can get pulled onto the pickups. That's I'm not sure how close they've got to be to do that, but I don't think they're anywhere near close enough here. So I don't think it's a pickup issue. I got a feeling that it might just well be a fret evenness issue. So, but there is one thing where this differs from the spec to some degree, and I think let's have a look. The Fender spec said that if we hold down again at the 16th, their version is hold down at the 16th fret. The reason they do that is because it stiffens up and flattens out after that. But if we hold down, sorry about the view for a minute, if we hold down at the 16th fret, and then we feeler gauge the gap, they said it should be 0.5 to about 0.4 to 0.5 millimeters, and actually it was about 2.25. So the first thing I did pick up is that the neck is it's certainly flatter than the spec recommends, which could have something to do with this. I don't know where it's gone now. Typical. Well, okay, so that's about where I can pick it up. So I think the thing to do is to get on the go with this. I think I'm going to do 2 things with this. I'm going to tweak the relief in the neck to a little bit more than it's currently got. So get closer to the 0.4 of the spec. And then I think what I'll do is I'll mask it off. We'll mark it up, and we'll do a long truss rod, gentle fret level. And the reason for that is not necessarily because the action is high enough to miss out any uneven frets, but we are getting that what I call fret slap as it goes up, and a very light leveling can help to just clear out the space for those strings to play nicely at that action. It is lower than the Fender spec for a jazz or precision bass, that's for sure. But there's no reason why, just being a neck with frets on it, there's no reason why it shouldn't play at this sort of low action. If we went much lower, then yes, it's pushing it a bit for such big strings. So I don't think there's too much wrong with this, but I think it's worth doing a very, very careful light leveling to see if we can do that, scooping out any unevennesses in the neck. So the first thing to do is I'm going to make that adjustment to the truss rod. Now this has got a little wheel for making adjustments, which is kind of a handy little device like this. Now to allow the strings to pull more curvature, we need to go counterclockwise just slightly. So you can see that I've done about, what, 5 degrees of a circle. Very, very small amount. Just like with a guitar 6-string, I strongly encourage you to develop the braveness to adjust the truss rod. Don't be afraid of it. You'll be a great disadvantage if you don't learn or don't become comfortable adjusting the truss rod. It's vital you do. It's not a, I don't know what the word would be, it's not a failing that you need to be prepared, or that a tech can't make it exactly stay the same all year round, because a tech simply can't. You need to be able to make that adjustment, because the climate will change throughout the year. Now that tiny little bit has increased it to closer to 0.5, so I'm going to go a 3 degrees even back on that adjustment. It's so tiny, but you can kind of see that if that much of a adjustment makes a difference. Makes a amazing difference, actually. So that's just a tiny amount of extra curvature in the neck. Not bad. So this, yeah, this is coming in at 3. Is that 2.5? Low E. Yeah, that's the low E is coming at 3. So that's 0.96 below. But let's just see for 1 second. Let's take out a whole turn's worth. No, a whole turn on these pretty much decks it out. So an adjustment that much there takes this down it takes it down to 2.25, 2.25, 3.9. Is that 2.9? Let's get my sanity checked. Oh, sorry, they measure it. They measured it here, didn't they? So I'm getting 2.25 versus 3.96. That isn't actually bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these down by the same amount just to get a feel, because we can always put them back. So I'm doing 1 full turn on each of the hex grove screws, using the American standard screw hex driver thing, small one. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way down. That one's bottomed out just there. So bottomed out just there. So that as people say, there is a limit on the G. You can't go below. Let's have a see if I can do it by tuning fork note. Right, so this is at its kind of lowest action really, without shimming it, or it's not got a tilt on it, so it would only be shimmable if you wanted to lower the action any further. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to test, because we were planning to give this a very careful level anyway, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to test out the ability to get this, get it playing at its lowest action setting right there, which we don't have to stick to, of course. So what I'm going to do, rather than, I'm going to clean it all afterwards anyway, so what I'll do is first of all, if I find the thing, I'm going to colour the frets. So I'm going to use the ultra long bar for this, and I'm going to, oh God, this died or something. I'm going to use the long fret levelling beam. It's kind of, I'm looking at the condition of the top of the frets now, and they look, I don't know if it's natural wear, but they're a little bit flattened off in places. So I think they may have been levelled in the past. So that's interesting. Either that or they've been levelled from wear, but it looks a little bit too much right to the edge. It's not where you'd play it. So I don't think doesn't feel to me like that's actual play wear. So I think it's been levelled. Could be in the factory. That would be a good thing if it was. Yeah, hard to tell exactly, but I think it's been done. So we'll see anyway. As I do a very gentle leveling, it'll reveal quite quickly the degree of flatness on any frets. It may have been done by some other the tech that worked on it before. You never know. So this is the principle of this is not, it's leveling not because there are uneven frets that are getting in the way, particularly individual uneven frets, the way we'd normally imagine leveling for, but it's because I suspect that the little bit of fret slap that we have, like with 6-string guitars, is caused by an overall gentle unevenness of the neck, which is very common anyway to all necks, because none of them end up being completely straight. So what I find is if I set up the truss rod in a curve, then what we get is a gentle flattening of the undulations, if you like. It's pretty good for that. Now I just want to double check, because I'm not used to doing this on basses very often, so I just want to check the spacing. To there, there to there. Right, that's a good place. Now, because I don't recognise that muchly, I am going to put a little bit of tape on here just so I can remember where to put, save me time, where I'm going to put these little brass things back. So I'm going to use this. It's a very flexible truss rod. So the first thing about it is, well, it's flexible because it's long. So the first thing is, it's very easy to bend out of shape, which I don't really want to do. What I want most of all for this, if it were to bend out of shape, it would bend a bit like, I don't know if you've seen those Stu-Mac leveling beams that you put under your strings. Okay, the idea is they're meant to bend out of shape. They sort of push onto the neck and they conform to whatever the curve in the neck is. But in this case, what I really want is I want to map the curve, and then most importantly I want to let as much as possible, I want gravity to do its work. I want that out of the way a little bit, so let's just get a bit of tape. Yeah, so I want gravity. I don't want to distort the curve. I want to keep the curve as much as possible, and just gently, very gently. That should be okay. Very gently scoop out. So here we are handling it. Bong. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it in the middle. Really, I'm just letting gravity do it. Now what's often quite interesting when you do this is you see straight away where you may have uneven frets, and like I say, this is as much as possible preventing it from bending. Now straight away it's showing me a tiny bit of cutting there, tiny bit there, more there, a little bit there, none there, and some at the end there. So that could tell me that it's potentially just a very tiny fraction. Where's my marker point? Could be we need a tiny fraction more curved than it currently is, but I'll double check. So I sort of recalibrate it, double check with these marks, and it says it's on the mark. So if the calibration is right, and we have a little area here that the leveling beam isn't touching, what it means is this is just a tiny bit lower than the rest of it, which could have something to do with why it's got a little bit of fret slap. So, and again, so here I am with gravity only, just letting this go up and down over the frets. Now, mostly at this point, I'm so touching it so lightly that it's almost, but certainly not, it's barely cutting any metal. What we're seeing is it's taking off the marker pen and revealing what the flatness or what the condition of these frets was from before. Now, if I just kind of look at it now, we're evening out or getting into that little lower section here. We're just touching the frets now, so that means we've just ironed out what was a slight dip. There's so little material taken. I can afford to be gentle and allow it to continue to do it. Now, one of the things is if you touch it, it's going to bend. You can see it just by lifting it. So you could either do it at the end like this and allow the kind of natural gravity of it to do its thing. It's very, very gentle. I've sort of got a piece of tape there because that's where I'd sort of normally hold it. But what I'm trying not to do is press it down there so it flattens out, because we want it to gently impose its curve onto the frets as much as possible. Go right to the edge as well, and then come in. So incredibly gentle leveling, I mean barely anything at all. And then I will beautifully fail to get the grip frog tape off, meaning it's now stuck on the string. A little bit of dust kicked up, which we can brush off. Well, I could if I could find where I put that little paintbrush head thing. Here it is. Not a lot of dust because we've hardly moved any material. So there we have the first, the G track. brilliant, all the way up to about here, and there's the tiniest whiff of slap, and it's tiny. So all I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to push this off to the side with the string spreader, and at this end now I'm going to use the same calibration, and I'm going to just very gently allow this to press down a little bit and just get a little bit more contact on the frets at this end. So I'm just kind of helping it bite a little bit more. So the thing about this is it's so tiny, the amount of the actual amount of material and distance is concerned. The eagle-eyed will spot that that also means that it will only take a fraction of a millimeter's change with respect of humidity or change in temperature for the clearance we have on a low action to be stolen away by the change, if you like. And if that happens, then you can very quickly, the lower you have your action set, the quicker you can suddenly find yourself back in to some fret slap. So that's just a thing to be conscious of. I suppose it's the price you pay for. I'll just slack this off a little bit to get some movement out of it. It's the price you pay for working with a low action. Now this one, interestingly, doesn't really want to play the stay out of the way game, so I'm going to wrap it around there for a minute. Not perfectly ideal, but it will do. Again, if I even so much as turn this rod part, it's going to what's the word? It's going to change the shape slightly, and it's always worth checking a few times in a row, make sure the calibration, as I call it, is correct. So we're just running up and down again under gravity, hoping that by and large the shape remains the same. But we already know that there's a kind of slight hollow in the middle here, which we're sort of expecting that to show up as an area that we need to just kind of gently eke out a little bit. And let's have a quick look. Yeah. No. Yeah. So same thing again. And last time we got there with a little bit more time. Again, no harm in calibrating it again for where we are, which is what I call the D track on this. And if the calibration's gone out of thingy, then we just retweak it. But this way it's looking at the moment, this is still pretty much spot on. So if this is made, if the truss rod tool has made a smooth curve, then what it's showing is that the neck itself doesn't actually have the same smooth curve. And that's what I've been finding over the last year or so using this method. I've used it for 7 years or so, but in the last year I've really figured out that there is this difference between the real sort of bumpy curve of the neck and the frets, or fretboard you could call it, caused by the sort of unevenness of the wood. There's a difference between that and what you might call the idealized curve created by this truss rod when we bend it into a curved shape. Now, what I did there as well, we've now got these cutting up a little bit, so we're now level on everything. What you saw me doing there was just paying a little bit more tension, downward pressure at the end, because I knew that that's what we needed to do on the last track. So let's try this. Okay, so this is turning out to be a bit too low for this string here. Actually, you know what it is? Idiot. That's what it is. Should have known, isn't he? That's right then. Tiny, could say a tiny little bit of slap at that end. Let's just lift this out one more time, if we can, off to the side. Now I will slack it again. That's a slight downside of this, is in slacking it, obviously I'm changing the tension a little bit, which is slightly off where I want it to be, but it sort of works out in the end, I've found. So I'm just going to let this work a little bit at this end, because I'm feeling a little bit of slap down there. So just kind of holding the truss rod in place so it doesn't skip, miss that first couple of frets. So there's a part of this which becomes a lot of practice and instinct comes into play, or feel, and once you get familiar with it, it's a very elegant system. Look at that. Got rid of it. So it's a pretty nice system. I like it, but it is it's different from it's very different from the standard fret leveling. And I think the real place it's scored, I mean, there's a number of advantages, and sometimes people come onto YouTube and go, oh, why don't you do it the proper way, with a flat beam and your neck off the guitar and leveled and flat and whatever. And it's a little long-winded to explain to somebody who hasn't listened to any of the previous explanations as to why it is I use this method. But the a primary reason for it, actually one of the most important reasons, and it pertains very much to the 6-string guitar, which you of course tend to bend the notes on it. The reason, one of the massive benefits of this method is that by leveling with the strings on, I'm able to level until the action I've chosen clears up, and I can hear the moment at which it stops buzzing or slapping or whatever, and then I can stop, and I don't have to waste any more fret material chasing a sort of an absolute mathematical levelness, which you tend to do when you're using a fret rocker and a conventional leveling beam. So that's probably the biggest reason, is the amount of material it saves by choosing the action I want and leveling until it plays. And of course the only way I can, it's only because I've got the strings on that I can stop and I can actually hear with my ears and feel with my fingers when it's fixed whatever buzzing was at play. So thank you. That's you can't do that with any other leveling method. So now we've got a little bit of slap at that end, and you might wonder what I mean by slap as opposed to fret buzz. Fret buzz, I suppose we're used to talking about it insofar as we kind of all know what we mean by fret buzz. It's usually, typically, when there's a high fret in a series of frets and it's getting in the way of a note that we're trying to play, and what characterizes that typically is that it's tends to be found in one place. So it's unusual that every fret isn't high, because if every fret's high, what's it high relative to? So you can't really have every fret being high. So fret buzz tends to be where you have a series of frets more or less level with each other, and then one here, maybe one there, that stands out above the others or below the others, which cause them to choke. Not bad. Fret buzz tends to be caused by a specific incident or incidents of high frets or low frets, because they create the same effect, same problems when bending strings or when playing notes. So you tend to, so if you're playing up and down the neck and you find plays okay, and then you've got one note choking as you get up the top there, that will usually be fret buzz as the result of a high fret, and that gets fixed by leveling to take down the part of that fret that's higher than everything else, to bring it down in line with everything. So that's what I would call fret buzz. And actually a single high fret is a much easier proposition to deal with. It actually gets quite costly fret material when you have a single or one or two low frets, which is quite common, because what that means is you have to bring all of the other frets, all of the other frets down to bottom out the low one. So that's, you can, as you can see, that's a fairly costly thing in terms of metal. So far better that we find high frets than low ones, as simple as that. Okay. But that's right, a little bit in the middle. Yeah, so that's what I typically find. That's what I call fret buzz. And fret slap, let's put that down there if we can. No, we can't. Fret slap is a different thing, and you tend to, if you find notice that every note has this slight after buzz, and every note all the way up the neck has that. That tends to be what I call fret slap, and that's not caused by a single fret being uneven. It's caused by generally your frets not having quite enough room to spin, and that can be an indication that you've not got enough relief in your neck, or it can be an indication, see that's the uneven ones there, can be an indication that a certain area of your fingerboard like this is undulating or slightly high, and that's what I think I'm seeing here. So that's why if the last year or so well, that's why that's a dead note. Right, good. You can see it's a little bit mucky now, so we've got some cleaning to do. Yeah, so so when you have fret slap, it's usually the indicator is that it's on all the frets all the way up, and it's just a little slight buzz. And in the last year, as I've said, that I've discovered that one of the great things about that method is if you can make sure that the rod holds its curve, you can level it with a different purpose, and the purpose isn't to iron out single uneven frets, which of course it will do as it goes along, but what it will also do, if you keep the shape perfectly firm, it'll scoop out or just level out those undulations caused by the curvature and compression of the neck. So that's quite an interesting benefit. Now this neck it's got fairly dirty from use over its life. So, and it's a practically, it's almost unfinished. So I'm going to now do my best to clean it up as good as possible. The problem with it is that because it's plain wood, it might prefer to be given a sort of careful soap down. We'll hold this on for a minute, but you can see where the kind of grime is. It's amazing. That's the finger gaps. So I'm going to use some where has it gone? Naphtha on it. But first of all, I'm going to just do that thing called recrowning. So having leveled the frets, I'm just going to now remark them. This is one reason why I've never liked completely unfinished boards, because I find them quite difficult to clean. As I say, the best place to go is a bit of water and a tiny bit of soap as a start point, a toothbrush to give them a sort of gentle, give the wood or the finish a gentle scrub. But it does want to soak up the grime from your fingers very easily. Okay, so now I'm going to get the fret crowning file and my declogging brush. So these are good medium size frets, medium jumbo size. So I will use that side of my file. Actually better off putting that down. Don't know what the view's looking like now, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So what I'm seeing straight away is these have been leveled before. Now the reason I can judge that is because I know how flat they should be for the amount of leveling I just did, and I know the grade of paper I used on the beam is 400 grit. So it's a very slow cutting paper, and what I'm seeing here is there's a flatter top on these frets. It could well be that that's done in the factory. I'm finding more factories seem to be doing that, which is, I think, in some ways a smart move, because it gives the buyer or the owner a chance to immediately set a lower action straight out of the box if it suits them, and it gets rid of any obvious high fret problems that would be a game, showstopper, and end up with somebody sending the guitar straight back for a refund, or exchange, which it's never a good thing. So I guess as a manufacturer, whatever you can do to reduce the chances of that happening is a smart move. Now in the case of what I get to see is it's at this point where I take off the paint or the pen, marker pen, and I see how flat the tops of the frets are versus what I just did to them. And from experience, I can tell straight away when I noted it, if you remember, I noted it before I started leveling, but this gives me an indication of how much they've been flattened before. Now, as I said, it's a very good thing to do because it lets the user set a lower action right out of the box. The downside of it is that because of the economy of margins and time involved, they tend to only do a quick, what I would call a radius block leveling, which can be done in 20 seconds. And that's it. And then they probably push the frets up against the buffer or something when they're finished. But it leaves the frets a little bit flattened, and they're not recrowned like this. But it's better than not being done at all, is I think my verdict. Okay, so that's that. Now it's time to get off the finish. Now this is always a difficult thing to do because the pen is a mucky stuff, so it's always good to try and get as much off as possible. If you wipe it now with this stuff, what happens is it tends to spread the, it can spread the pen around, but it's bringing more of it off actually than before. So it's just a thing to watch out, but it's doubly sensitive to this if it's an unfinished maple board, which is, I suppose, why, you know, a gloss finish of some description is always a fairly good thing, because it gives you a much more easily cleanable surface to work with. Sort of bare wood will just soak up oils and discoloration very, very quickly. So I'm first of all trying to just get off as much of the grime as possible. And then we'll clean some more once the first load of grime is off. So even when you clean it, you can still see the old finger marks, you know, where it's clean either side of the either side of the strings, which is quite interesting. And of course, being plain, I can't oil it or anything, because I'm not sure if it's been played a lot, this guitar, because you can see there's a little bit of corrosion here. So whatever the finish was on it was very, very thin, if anything. I guess they'll probably say it's a satin, very fine, a thin satin finish. But hey, I'm just trying to get as much grime out of here as possible. It's come up all right with this naphtha. It's very harmless material for doing this. So what I do next on here is to mask off the fingerboard and sand and polish out the frets to a nice shiny playing surface. And obviously it'll need wiping down and cleaning again, but that will be just to get the dust off, and we'll kind of keep the masking tape, will be to protect the fingerboard from scratches of sandpaper. Some people complained online about sharp edges on the frets, but they seem to be pretty good. So, you know, maybe it confirms or adds to my feeling that this has been leveled in a luthier situation. Okay, I'm going to go off camera because I think my sound system may have worn out, conked out by now. Still working. Wow. I'm going to go off camera, and you can see the sort of the age wear. In fact, it's sort of wearing through there and there. It's gone through whatever the finish was. Yeah, I'm going to go off camera and I'll mask all of this off, do all the polishing out on its own, and then a clean up, and then I'll come and restring it at the end. And tomorrow, I haven't got the new batteries for it that Jabez wanted, but I will put those in tomorrow, and then we'll get the guitar back off to him in the post. Ooh hoo hoo! Right, let's have a quick view check. Okie doke. Right, so here we are, finishing touches. Just going to tighten the jack plate. It's absolutely tipping it down outside. Let's get the tool. The tool required for this is here, and another one is here. Come on now. Do you know what? I think I'm just going to take it out and have a quick look. Yeah, pounding down with rain out there. That seems to be in pretty good nick. I shall just make sure it's tightened as much as it can be. Right, here we go. Okay, that is as tightened as it will go. It's not bad though. Okie dokie. So next step is putting strings on, and then we'll check the intonation, make any adjustments, and then we'll be done. Short of some new batteries tomorrow, which go in this little thing here, which a number of people have commented on, saying how they like the fact that the screw heads are easy to get undone with, not a thumbnail, with a plectrum. No, not a plectrum. Alright, a dime, a nickel, something or other. But the idea was that you didn't have to carry around a little small screwdriver with you, but who knows. Okay. What are you tangled in here for? What's going on? Stay there. Okay. So, all in good order. So I tend to, with these, I tend to go one peg length past the to the next peg and cut it there. That's typically what I do. So I'll need a good set of cutters with these buggers. Pardon me. To there, cut. In we go. Bend it over. Do it up. So, God, it's terrible, this weather. This is summer. I knew I'd end up complaining about the summer, but you can forgive me. I mean, we've just passed midsummer in the UK, so we're heading back towards winter now, and this is the best of our summer. I'm lying. There will be some nice weather at some point, but it's pretty wet and coldish at the moment, but we're used to it, I suppose. I shouldn't really complain. The main reason it annoys me is because it gets in the way of doing spraying. I did a little bit tonight in nitro. It was just about okay for some clear nitro, but okay. Here you go, under you go. There we are. So I've put this to its lowest possible setting, and the idea is that Jabez can now try it out at this action, and of course he can raise the action if he prefers it a little bit higher, but it's starting off at its lowest settable action, and I've leveled the frets to work as well as possible with that action. I've adjusted the knobs so they're all facing the right way. Let's get a tuner fork. Right, let's just try the do the intonation bit, because the beauty of doing the setup the way I've done it is that that's gone back to exactly where it was previously. Same gauge strings, so the neck will bend to the same position and the action will be the same. So all we just need to do at this point is test the intonation. Now this is a little bit fiddly because it's sticking out. I don't want to put it on the strap, I just want to hold it here. Yeah. Beautifully set up intonation, so nothing to worry about there. That's one showing up a little bit sharp, so I'm going to pull that back a fraction. If I can I get into that recess? Oh sure, it's buried deep inside the block. Let's just make sure I can get it with the right, the right screwdriver. Okay, that was sharp, so I just want to pull it back a tiny fraction more. Again, it's very, the whole thing about the intonation is very depending on how you fret the note. That's good. Right, ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. The dimension bass lowered down a little bit more. I think the height gap on this, what did they say? 330 seconds. Oh, what would 330 seconds be in normal money? Let's just check this out. 330 seconds. Go away, go away. Go away, hello. Go away. Sorry, cancel that. No, go away, go away. 3 stroke over 32. 30 seconds in inches. 2.3 millimeters. What was I measuring? Oh yes, the gap. 2.3 millimeters. Clang. Yeah, it's about right. That's 2. If anything, it's a fraction high. So let's take it down a tiny little bit. But apart from that, it's pretty good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2 more, I think. 1, 2. 1, 2. I think it's at the near the bottom of its range now anyway, because most people have a higher action. There we go. Right, thank you for watching. That's the dimension bass setup and precision level to get rid of the fret slap to allow it to have a nice low action and to be played without that extra little slap that can be so annoying. So thank you for watching. See you again very soon. Back in its lovely protective case goes this.